Hey Rockstars, Lidshot, NAMM 2020. I'm at the PreSonus booth with none other than Mr. Ray Tansen. How are you doing, dude?
Hey there, I'm doing great.
So, you know, you're pretty legendary on our video screens for talking and teaching about PreSonus, and it's cool to be hanging out with you. And I know that I've been using some of these amazing tools down at my Bonnaroo hay bale studio every summer.
Yes.
And I thought we'd give you a chance to kind of show off some of this stuff, and we'll just check it out and see what you got. So what are we standing in front of here?
Awesome. Yeah, so this is our flagship. This is the StudioLive 64S. It's our flagship mixer. So we took our StudioLive 32 Series 3 mixers, we doubled the amount of DSP in them, so now we've got a StudioLive Series 3 mixer that is 64 channels. There's actually a total of 76 total mix channels available when you count in all the effects returns, auxiliary inputs, and then the 64 primary. It also has 32 flex mixes. Those 32 flex mixes can be any combination of aux mix, subgroup, or matrix mix. And that's in addition to the 8 dedicated effects mix buses for all of the 8 effects mix racks.
It's deep. It's deep. You can do a lot of stuff with this. In fact, I always have to like bring myself back up to speed, remembering like how I did it last time and what I'm going to do each time I use it. But let's dig in and take a look at it and see what kind of stuff you got. Now,
sure.
Now we've got a lot of cool features that are beyond just console, right? We've got ability to record stuff in here as well, right?
That's right, yeah. So we've got a built-in SD card recorder. So with the SD card recorder, you can do a full 34-channel multi-track recording right here on the SD card, no computer necessary. Well, along with that, you can also do an automated virtual sound check. So once you've done a recording on the SD card, it'll save the project and scene, along with all the multi-track audio, and just by selecting your sound check button, if we had an SD card in there, you'd be able to see it, but it's not. We'd be able to go in and open up that session, and it will bring up the mix with it. I can do virtual sound check. It automatically switches everything over to be sourced from the SD card, and then when you're done and you close the session, it returns everything back to being sourced off of the analog inputs or the stage boxes. So completely automated process to be able to do a quick virtual sound check, or even training for volunteers or people who might be coming up to use the board.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. And I guess if you were using this also in your rehearsal space and you've got your band sort of mic'd up, you can just capture your rehearsal right there. And now this, you can just pop that out and open it up in Studio One as well?
That's right, yeah. It saves a session that is compatible with our Studio One software. So Studio One is our professional DAW. All of the mixers come with Studio One Artist. And yeah, so when you record to the SD card, it records the session that can be opened up in Studio One. So all your tracks will be right there in Studio One. You can also open it up in our Capture software. And so between Capture and Studio One, you can also export those sessions as an AAF file. So if you're using a third-party software application, you can still take that multi-track recording from the SD card, open it up in one of our applications, and export that as an AAF session to be brought into any of the other DAWs that you might want to use.
How very nice of you guys. That's very cool. Very big. So now one of the things that is, I guess, new in this past year or whatever, sort of recent, is the ability to use the console to actually control the DAW as well. Can you talk a little bit about what, how powerful this is as far as actually mixing out of Studio One straight through this console and not having to click around with the mouse quite so much?
Yeah, absolutely. So for Studio One, we have what we call a native integration. And so because we develop both Studio One, the software, and the StudioLive, the hardware, we can do a lot of integration between the two, so you get really tight control. So one of the things is, because our mixers have touch-sensitive motorized faders, you can actually do all of your touch automation and your write automation, latch automation, because they're touch-sensitive. And then we also have the ability to control plugins, access additional screens, all your transport controls, and a lot of other features like that, accessing your mix banks, all right here from the console. So it really streamlines your workflow, so you can spend less time finding and looking for the things you want with a mouse and a keyboard, and just work right on the mixer. And you can also freely switch back and forth on the fly between controlling your DAW, whether it be Studio One. We also support MCU and Huey, so you can also control other DAWs like Logic and Pro Tools. So you can switch very immediately from doing that to being back to controlling the mixer. And the mixer continues to run even when you're in DAW mode. So you can use it for monitor mixing or for tracking. and then jump in to do some control in the DAW in the middle of that in the studio.
That's so cool. Well, let's get in close and let's start poking around and seeing how these faders work, and show us what's cool to look at on here.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have the touch-sensitive motorized faders, like I said. So right here we can access our main mix across all of the channels here. We also have what we refer to as kind of a split workflow. So right now I've got it all together. So I'm seeing channels 1 all the way to 32, and I can bank over and get to channels 33 to 64. But I can also bank this right-hand side a little differently. I've got additional buttons here. So I can bring up my auxiliary inputs, which is going to be my effects returns, as well as my auxiliary inputs, my tape input, my talkback channel, all available right here. And while I've got this on the right-hand side, my left-hand side will be my input channels. I can also go to my DCA groups. So I can have up to 24 DCA groups on these mixers. So I can have a DCA group here. I can spill out the DCA. So if I hit select, it'll spill out the DCA over on the channels on the left, so just what's in that DCA group. Press it again, it goes back to the mix that I had up there.
So for, VCA for Dummies is like if you've got all your drum tracks here and you want to have one fader to control them, you can hit this button, see all your individual drum tracks, hit it again, something else, hide the drums, and just go back to a single fader, right?
That's exactly right, yeah. So when you've got it all set up in one of the DCA groups, one fader will control the mix on all of the other faders. So I can create one real quick here. What I do is I just push and hold the select button. You'll see the select buttons light up on the other side here. I just add what I want to be in it. They'll go solid. When I let go, I've now created a DCA group. So I can turn on a feature here. We actually have a feature in our DCA groups called traditional mode. And what that does is it doesn't move the input fader, so it works like a traditional DCA on other digital consoles. But if I turn that traditional mode off, now you'll see when I go and I adjust one of the DCAs, you can see the faders move on the other side.
That's so badass looking, I love that. And these faders feel great too, and they move really well. We might have to show them Mardi Gras mode too.
Yeah. So I know some consoles, they've got like the mode you put it into where you can see everything flashing, so a lot of them call that Vegas mode. We're not really, we're from Baton Rouge, Louisiana, or near New Orleans, so for us it's Mardi Gras mode. We're getting them up in Mardi Gras season right now, so let's hit some Mardi Gras mode.
All right, zoom in close on that, check it all out. This is cool, it's a lot of fun. If you get sick of mixing, just put it in this Mardi Gras mode and sit back and enjoy for a minute. Let's look at some of these other buttons too. Wow, that's amazing, I love that. That's so cool. Can you get it to spell my name for me, please?
Oh, I wish. Well, I'll add that to the feature list. We'll get that in a firmware update for you.
All right, so a couple of quick questions. What are these buttons all about? What do we do with those?
Sure, so these are user function buttons. So all these buttons can be freely assigned by the user. So, for example, one of the cool things is if you're using this as a DAW controller with Studio One, any of those buttons can be assigned to literally any function in Studio One or any macro in Studio One.
Macro effects and stuff like that, so you can get it to do editing for you and things?
That's right, yeah, with Studio One. Now when you're using it just as a mixer, you can go into your settings here, and you go into your user button assignments, and you'll see all 8 of the buttons that are available. By default, they're mute groups, but I can go in and edit that, and I can change it from mute group. I can make it a tap tempo button for our effects. I can make it a scene, so I can assign a scene to a button, so anytime I hit that button, it recalls that scene. And I can do scene navigation. So if I, for example, have a marching band or a theater, and I'm stepping through multiple scenes as the acts go through, I can just have a next scene, previous scene, and just next recall, next recall.
Yeah. That's awesome. I like the idea of making the console customized the way you want it to be. So one of the things that I think is really smart about what you guys do is you leave space here because sometimes you want to just have to write down what does that thing do right there. Now can we actually do like a dry erase marker on there or something, or do we just put tape on there, console tape?
Yeah, dry erase marker will work. You can also use like a grease pen. And that's why we made it that little white strip right there, just so it will have a nice contrast and be obvious that this is a place you can put a label. But yeah, more often than not, though, what we see people doing is just using a bit of board tape, a little console tape on there.
Yeah, it's just smart thinking because you guys have a respect for the way people actually work and are offering ways for us that we, to future work that we didn't think about yet. But can we take a quick glimpse at, some of the plugins that come with this console too?
Sure, absolutely. So I don't have all of them installed here at the show. That we have a total of 25 available plugins, and those are a combination of EQs and compressors, and they're all state space modeled, which means that they're actual emulations of real hardware gear. We actually have an engineer in our Hamburg office who has a PhD in analog circuit modeling, literally wrote some of the books on it. And so he has modeled real analog outboard gear to run as various different EQ and compressor models directly on the mixers. And what's cool about these models is they're not only available directly on the mixers, but you also get a plugin that works in Studio One for them as well, so you can use them for your mix downs. So I have a couple of them on here that I can show you.
Yeah, we'll take a look here and see what you got.
So this is our standard. This is just a 4-band fully parametric EQ, but I can go in here and change it to a passive, and you'll see I've got a model here of a passive EQ. Again, it's state space modeling.
Hey, we should point out that those are all controlled over here. So we have controls of all the knobs on any of these EQs or compressors while you're working at the same time, right?
That's right, yeah. So you can control them all over here, but if you prefer and you want to just do a touch and turn, you can also just select it here. You'll see it get highlighted on the screen, and then I can use the knob underneath the screen to make adjustments as well. So we offer a couple of different ways to work depending on how you're most comfortable doing it.
I like this sort of military blue-gray there. It's cool. And then compressors, also effects. What kind of effects should we expect to have if we had everything in here?
Yeah, so in addition to the EQs and the compressors, we have just a variety of different models of compressor and an EQ. So if you think about some of the top compressors that you would want in analog outboard gear, we've got models of those. They're all emulations of real outboard gear. We didn't actually do any specific licensing with the companies that make them, so we give them creative names so that we're all safe, but they are actual true emulations. So if you go and do some searches and look at what it looks like, you'll get a pretty good idea of what it's modeled after.
Well, that's groovy. Well, so just a reminder, Rockstars, every year we take this board down to Bonnaroo to the Hay Bale studio. If you're curious about hearing or seeing what we do down there, just go to thehaybalestudio.com and you can actually find, images, videos, stuff like that of us using the console down there, and it's been awesome. Ray, thanks for doing this with us, man.
Absolutely.
There's so much more to talk about, but that's probably a good start, right? So
absolutely.
Let the Rockstars know where they should go find this online. Where should they go check this out and learn more about it?
Absolutely, yeah. So we encourage you to go visit our website, PreSonus.com, and from there you'll be able to find all the information that you need.
All right, dig it. Thanks for watching, Rockstars. We'll see you guys in the next video. Cheers.